This story is about a guy who desperately wants to protect the love of his life, which unexpectedly turns out to be his clan leader. The hero, our main character, spent his current life as the weakest member of the demonic clan, despite once having been the strongest hero who saved the world in a previous life. He had been granted a unique power and the rare opportunity to be resurrected twice. Yet, he chose to live this life in weakness, until the day came when he witnessed the death of the clan leader, a woman he secretly admired, betrayed by her own husband. In that moment, he chose to die beside her, but not before asking her one question. If they were given another chance at life, how could he win her heart? After she gave him her answer, he made a vow. In his next life, he would use his power to take revenge and protect the clan leader, no matter the cost. Our story begins within the demon sect, currently under siege by the Merm. The sect's soldiers are putting up their best resistance to keep the Union from breaching the inner gates. The scene shifts to our protagonist, Yong, who is rushing toward the palace where the sect leader resides. He reports that the Merm has dispatched over 10,000 fighters. A man notices him and appears surprised to see him at such a dangerous time. That man's name is Sandojin. He approaches Yong and demands to know why he's walking around unguarded in a battlefield, urging him to follow at once. Yong responds that he's heading to the leader's palace. She had remained there after ordering her people to flee as fast as they could. Sandojin replies grimly, saying the situation is critical. At this rate, the defensive line won't last more than an hour, so Yong should seek safety at once. But Yong insists that he'll come back, but first, he needs to know what the leader is thinking. Realizing he can't stop him, Sandojin lets him go. Yong runs off, leaving him behind, and takes a deep breath, murmuring to himself that his life has been nothing but miserable. When he reaches the palace doors, he calls out, asking if the leader is still inside. Hearing no reply, he raises his voice, shouting that he's at the door and begging her to open it. Then her voice responds, telling him he may enter. He's truly stunned. He hadn't expected her to respond at all. As he places his hand on the door, about to push it open, he wonders if she overheard his earlier words, which may have come across as disrespectful. Nervously, he explains that he didn't mean any offense, he was simply overwhelmed by the situation. Then he shoves the door open with all his strength, admitting it was incredibly heavy and that a guard should have stayed by the leader's side at the very least. Once inside, he catches his breath. The leader, her body visibly weakened, tells him that his combat abilities are still below those of a third-level fighter. Still panting, he jokes that he's just relieved no one else saw how much he struggled to open the door. She nods slightly and notes that if any elders had heard how he spoke to her, he would have been in serious trouble, implying she'd heard everything. He bows to her in respect. It's then we learn the leader's name, Yura. She asks why the sect's weakest member has come seeking her. He responds by asking why she's still here at all. Still sweating, she explains it's because of the poison. Yong becomes furious, demanding to know whether the one who did this to her was the traitorous sect leader. That man's name is Han Mobayak, the very man Yura had personally chosen as her husband. But he had betrayed her, opened the sect's gates to the Murim Union, and became the leader of the defectors. Yura, filled with sorrow, says Han Mobayak told her he had suffered greatly just to get close to her. He had earned her trust and her heart. The reason he poisoned her, he said, was so she could feel just a fraction of the pain he had endured. Upon hearing this, Yong covers his mouth, trying to suppress any sound, his face twisting with rage. Seeing this, Yura smiles and says he really is an interesting person. But Yong tells her there's no time for that kind of talk. He remarks that she had always been serious, confident, and strict in every sense, but even in her final moments, she had managed to smile. Then he asks whether it's already too late for her to recover from the poison. She replies that it likely is. The toxin has reached her energy core. She adds that she could have countered any other poison, but this specific type is the only one she couldn't resist. Yong calls out her name and keeps repeating the word if over and over. This angers Yura. She warns him that if she hears him say if one more time, she'll pull his tongue out and demands that he get to the point. Summoning his courage, he asks, if she had the chance to come back to life, what would she do? Yura is stunned by the question. Yong chuckles and reminds her that he brought this up before, that in his past life, he had saved the world. She reacts with disbelief, saying she can't picture someone like him saving the world. He tells her to just pretend it's true and once more asks, what would she do if the chance still existed? She questions why he's so set on giving her hope, saying that if such a chance did exist, he should already be chasing it. He responds that the first thing she should know about him is that he can't stand betrayal. And the second is that this is his way of repaying her for what she once did for him. Yura looks puzzled. She has no idea what debt he's referring to. Smiling, he tells her not to think too hard about it. He recalls that their first meeting was back when he was one of the candidates to become her husband. Yura returns his smile, a hope flickering across her face, and asks what he would do if she really came back. He says that even if she wouldn't remember any of this, he now knows every traitor who infiltrated the sect, along with the Merm Union that dared to attack them. He swears to use every bit of his power to destroy them, without exception. Then he asks if she has any final wish, promising to remember and do all he can to make it come true. But Yura's reply catches him completely off guard. She tells him that she wants him to try seducing her. Yumyong is utterly shocked. He says he's confident he can stop Han Mobaek and prevent him from becoming the demon sect's leader, but as for becoming her husband, that he's not so sure about. He adds that he knows she doesn't love him. She had told him before that a close relationship between them was impossible, that love requires mutual desire. He reminds her that ever since she became the demon sect's leader, she became someone no one could challenge. She crushed anyone who dared to propose to her. The only reason Han Mobaek became the sect leader was because he was the only one who could tolerate her temperament. Yura responded that he didn't have to do anything he didn't want to. But Yumyong said he never claimed her request was impossible. He stepped in closer, and she looked visibly flustered by his approach. He told her that romantic feelings often arise when one person cares for someone who doesn't return those feelings. Then he smiled and said that since the request came from her, it wouldn't be difficult for him at all. Yura blushed deeply, unable to conceal her embarrassment. Yumyong looked at her intently and remarked that her features were truly beautiful. Then he asked for just one promise. He wanted her forgiveness if he had ever spoken poorly of her in the past. Dropping to his knees, he held her hands and told her that if she had any weaknesses, she should share them with him so he could use them once he returned to the past. But she looked visibly annoyed and warned him that if their conversation leaked in any way, she would make sure he paid dearly. She added that she would only say what needed to be said once, and he had better listen carefully. After she shared all her vulnerabilities, Yumyong burst out laughing, saying she must have been something special back then. That irritated Yura, and she demanded that he be quiet. Calling his name sternly, she told him their conversation was over. The intruders had already reached her palace, and she offered him a peaceful death if he wished. But he refused. With a smile, he said he wanted to witness everything to the very end. Just then, the leader of the Merm Union, Guan Haiyan, approached them, saying he never imagined he would live to see the demon sect fall before his eyes. Yumyong responded that Guan Haiyan had arrived with a traitor. Guan Haiyan laughed and said he was well aware of that. He gestured toward Han Mobaek and announced that his current title was the Sacred Heavenly Dragon and that he had borne disgrace for the sake of Janju. Yumyong laughed loudly at the title and said he couldn't believe Han Mobaek had become a Merm lapdog with such a name. He insulted him outright, declaring that it was time for them to pay for their sins. Yura, still drenched in sweat, responded mockingly, saying that her beloved husband had finally returned to her. Han Mobaek replied that everything he had done was for Janju. Yura answered coldly, saying his actions had been for that society that dares to defy the heavens. Everyone around them was stunned by her words. It was the first time Yumyong had heard of such a society. Han Mobaek panicked and shouted to everyone, warning them not to be deceived by the words of this witch, claiming she was simply trying to sow chaos in her final moments. The Merm soldiers believed him, saying no one should trust a demon's words, that she would say anything to save her life. Han Mobaek then said there was no need to fight her one by one, they should all attack at once. Yura shouted back that even while poisoned, she could handle the likes of them with ease and without anyone's help. Guan Haiyan mocked her, saying she spoke with far too much confidence. But suddenly a tremendous surge of energy burst from Yura's body. She was ready to face them. The Merm soldiers were stunned that she still possessed such power despite the poison. Sensing danger, Guan Haiyan ordered his men to attack immediately, and so the battle began. Yura, leader of the demon sect, against the Merm Union forces. After a fierce fight, Yumyong woke up from the blackout he had slipped into during combat. Yura called out to him, saying she had feared he might have died. He was shaken by her deteriorating condition, but she continued, saying she was glad she had lived long enough to say goodbye. She added that the Merm forces had retreated after she activated her self-destruction technique. Then she looked at him and saw that he was crying. She asked him why, and he replied that he was overwhelmed with sorrow. Despite her body being riddled with wounds and pierced by swords, she stepped closer to him and asked if he would now keep his promise and try to win her over instead of Han Mob. Yumyong, still crying, assured her that he would keep that promise no matter what it cost him. Yura laughed softly and told him she was glad to hear those words from him. Then she collapsed and he rushed toward her, sobbing uncontrollably. He said those were his final moments in this life. His first life hadn't been that bad. He had saved humanity and earned the title Guardian of Earth. As a reward, the ruler had granted him 3 privileges, including the ability to be revived twice more. He had originally planned to enjoy a carefree life. But after everything that had happened, he decided to dedicate this final life solely to Yura. When he awoke, he found his servant Joe Chill standing in front of him with a tray of food. He was stunned. One look at Joe Chill's youthful face and he realized he had gone back in time many years into the past. He watched as Joe Chill placed large amounts of food on the table, and at that moment he heard a voice in his head. It told him that he now clearly remembered the exact point in time he had returned to. He was 17 again, just before he would head to the Demon Sect Tower and become known as the carefree playboy of the demonic bird. But fear took hold of him when he saw his father standing before him. His father was furious at his behavior, including drinking, even though he hadn't yet reached the age of initiation. His father struck him hard, dragged him back home, and held up the liquor bottle, yelling that he couldn't believe the eldest son of the Yen family couldn't even resist alcohol. His father's name was Jin Jan, head of the family, and he looked at Yumyong with clear disappointment, calling him a pitiful boy. Yumyong quickly moved toward him, trying to explain what had happened. But his father ordered him to be silent, saying he didn't want to hear a word from someone so weak. He added that if someone chose to be weak, they should at least be clever. Then he asked if Yumyong understood why he had personally come to bring him back home. Yumyong thought to himself that last time he hadn't answered and got beaten for it, so this time he replied that it was likely due to the upcoming meeting with the new leader of the demon sect. That meeting was with Yura, who at the time was also 17, along with the heirs of the 6 major demonic energy clans. It was a critical event to determine the next leader of the sect. But in his past life, none of the 6 heirs were chosen. Instead, Yura selected the traitor Han Mobaek during that event. Nervously, and with his father standing nearby, Yumyong whispered to himself that this would not happen again. His father responded that the only reason he had tolerated someone so talentless in the family until now was for this exact moment. Yumyong reflected internally that Jin Jan was a harsh father, one who used his son solely for the glory of the clan. Then when asked whether he could win the heart of the sect leader before the other heirs, Yumyong confidently responded that the other heirs didn't stand a chance. His father, pleased by the answer, smiled and told him that if he didn't want to bring shame to their name, he should at least improve a bit and begin learning martial arts. With that he left. As soon as he was gone, Yumyong took a deep breath, saying he hadn't expected his father to be the first person he'd see after returning to the past. He added that this moment in time was exactly what he had hoped for, not 10 years in the past, but 20, which gave him countless opportunities to make the most of. Then he recalled Yura's words about the society that defies the heavens, saying this group must still be active in the present timeline. With growing anger, he vowed to hunt them down and wipe them out completely. Jo-chan asked Yumyong what he planned to do now. Yumyong replied with a question of his own, asking what Jo meant by that. Jo reminded him that just moments ago he had boldly responded to his father and declared that he would become the future husband of the demon sect leader. Yumyong was surprised and asked when he had ever said anything like that. Jo insisted that's exactly what he had just said, but Yumyong objected, explaining he had never claimed he'd be her husband, he had only said the other heirs would be rejected. Jo looked puzzled and told him that it meant the same thing, but Yumyong corrected him, saying the 2 statements were very different. He added that, at this point in her life, Yura was impossible to win over. She was entirely obsessed with mastering martial arts and wouldn't waste a moment with someone weaker than herself. Just then, a young man approached, saying he hadn't expected Yumyong to still be here. Yumyong tried to remember who he was, then realized it was Male, the second son of the Blood Dragon clan. Male walked up with an irritated tone and asked if Yumyong saw any resemblance between him and someone else. Yumyong said he didn't, and asked if he was so excited that he came alone without bringing Yonghai. Male snapped, saying he didn't have a younger sister by that name. He then announced that he had come to challenge Yumyong to a duel. Yumyong was confused. This had never happened in his past life. He wondered if it was because his father hadn't hit him like last time. So now something unexpected was unfolding. The demon sect was governed by 6 major clans in addition to the sect itself, and among them, the relationship between Yumyong's clan and the Blood Dragon clan was the worst of all. Yumyong replied that interclan conflicts were strictly forbidden. Male said that this time was an exception. Yumyong asked what kind of exception he was talking about, thinking to himself that unless it involved a matter of clan survival or an official duel, then it must concern the main clan Cheon. He then asked if this was because of the demon sect leader. Male confirmed it, adding that if he lost this duel, he would withdraw from the sect leader engagement ceremony. Yumyong remembered that Male's younger brother was also a participant in that ceremony. With a mocking tone, he agreed to the madness and pushed further, asking if his brother was so weak that he needed to eliminate the competition just to stand a chance. Male grew furious, but Yumyong continued, saying there was no need to push himself unless he wanted to turn the match into an all-out conflict between the 2 clans. Enraged, Male lunged at him, yelling at him not to mock him. Seeing his intention, Joe placed a hand on his sword, ready to intervene if needed, but Yumyong stopped him, instructing him not to interfere under any circumstances. He thought to himself that this would be the first time he used his special ability, an awakening of the senses he had possessed in his first life as humanity's savior. The scene then shifted to Joe Chun, who was extremely worried. He told Yumyong that he didn't even know martial arts. How could he possibly face someone like Male? Yumyong continued thinking to himself, acknowledging that while his awakened senses might not be enough to face the leader of the Blood Dragon clan, things were entirely different when the opponent was just a young man. He then easily gripped the blade and thought that, right now, all he wanted was to crush Male. Joe Chun was stunned when he saw Yumyong assume a perfect stance and block the strike without a single error. After deflecting Male's sword, Yumyong kicked him hard. Joe Chun was amazed at how quickly and effortlessly Male had been defeated, especially considering that just yesterday Yumyong had been a careless youth with no skills or martial arts experience. Yumyong then called out to the hidden spectators and told them to take Male away. He warned them that Male would likely be in shock when he woke up, so they had better stop him from causing trouble unless, of course, they wanted him going around telling people how brutally he'd been beaten. They agreed to do as he asked, but just before leaving, he added one final thing. He reminded them that he had shown restraint and avoided leaving any visible marks. Inwardly, he thought that even a rumor about the heir of the Jin clan defeating the heir of the Ma clan would be disastrous, and he wasn't going to let that happen. The scene shifted to Yumyong's return to the clan residence, where all the members had gathered to welcome him back. The head steward asked if he had enjoyed his brief trip with his friends. Yumyong replied that it was hard to give a straight answer, as he couldn't exactly tell anyone that his father had come to fetch him personally, though the steward surely already knew that. Jokingly, he added that the steward could be quite blunt sometimes. The steward smiled and replied that he had simply been concerned for his health. Yumyong told him to forget about it and requested access to the training room. The steward was stunned and asked if he truly intended to start learning martial arts. Other clan members were also surprised, wondering if he was serious about training. He assured them he wasn't joking and asked them to fetch specific martial arts scrolls from the clan's library. He began listing the scrolls he wanted, recalling how his teacher once told him that mastering those skills would make him unbeatable. Back then, he had replied that those scrolls weren't originals but just copies. His teacher had explained that those techniques never had a chance to shine because they had ended up in the hands of Jin clan members who were obsessed solely with brute strength. After obtaining the scrolls, Yumyong noted that he was able to access them only because the library hadn't yet burned down. It would be destroyed in 4 years. He explained that the Jin clan's fighting style focused heavily on punches and kicks, which didn't suit him. However, he had natural talent, sharp intuition, and a strong foundation of internal energy. He added that while he might never meet his teacher again, in this life he would become the fighter his master had always hoped for. He then remembered the promise he had made to the demon sect leader about seducing her. But with a sense of sadness, he admitted that he couldn't fulfill it just yet. His current abilities simply weren't enough to earn her favor. He said he would need 5 years, 5 full years spent in complete isolation, dedicating himself entirely to mastering martial arts. Once he became stronger, he would personally hunt down the wretches from the society that defied the heavens, eliminating them one by one. That way, when the time came for Yura to rise as the leader of the demon sect, no one would ever be able to threaten her rule again. 2 weeks later, the scene shifts to Yum-Yong walking alongside his servant, Jo-Chil, who appeared annoyed at how slowly Yum-Yong was moving. Yum-Yong explained that since he would be the last in line anyway, there was no reason to rush. When they reached the gate and the guards opened it, they voiced their irritation at his extremely late arrival. Jo-Chil reminded him that this event was being hosted by the Cha-On clan, the main clan, and that such behavior was unacceptable. Yum-Yong calmly replied that if anything went wrong, he would handle it himself. He then recalled how, after failing at the engagement ceremony in his past life, his father had locked him up for an entire year. Suddenly, someone came flying through the air in front of them. Yum-Yong chuckled, saying it was quite an intense greeting, while Jo-Chil remarked that it looked like someone had just been thoroughly beaten. As the smoke cleared, a figure in red robes appeared. It was Ma-Yun, the younger brother of Male from the Blood Dragon clan. They heard Yura's voice calling out to Ma-Yun, saying he seemed like he might be useful to her. She asked if he still had the strength to continue fighting. Ma-Yun quickly got to his feet and ran toward her, claiming he still had enough energy left. At that moment, Yum-Yong's eyes met Yura's. He looked visibly disturbed, thinking to himself that, unfortunately, he hadn't arrived as late as he had hoped. Meanwhile, Jo-Chil was close to losing his temper and asked how he could joke around at a time like this. Yum-Yong replied that he only wanted to enjoy the show. He remembered that in the previous timeline, Ma-Yun had been defeated by Yura with a single strike and disappeared afterward. But this time, something felt different. As Ma-Yun launched a full-force attack at Yura, she blocked it effortlessly. With excitement, she commented that his skill level was better than she had expected. Yum-Yong was surprised, wondering whether Ma-Yun had really become this strong. But before he could think any further, Ma-Yun was already lying on the ground. His servants rushed to check on him, and even while lying there, he called out to Yum-Yong. Yum-Yong was puzzled by the gesture. Then, Ma-Yun declared that he would never lose to him. Turning back to Yura, he told her that it had been an honor to fight her. She replied that she hoped his level would improve the next time they met. Yum-Yong found the entire exchange strange, thinking Ma-Yun should have been dismissed immediately. Yura then ordered Ma-Yun to head to the medical center for treatment. He lit up with joy at her words, but as he walked past Yum-Yong, he shot him a glare filled with hostility. Yum-Yong was taken aback. This was their first meeting in this life, so he couldn't understand the animosity. Yura then approached him and called out, saying she had been waiting for him for quite some time. Yum froze upon hearing her voice and was stunned to realize that she had truly been expecting him. She pointed her sword at him and remarked that Ma-Yun had shown decent skill. She added that since he had defeated Ma-Yun's older brother, he was supposed to be much stronger. It was then that Yum-Yong understood the reason behind Ma-Yun's glare. Yura went on, saying that if he failed to meet her expectations, she would be very disappointed. Yum-Yong commented that the real problem with the demon sect was their tendency to resolve everything through brute force. Suddenly, Yura launched a swift attack aimed directly at his head. From the start, he had thought this was supposed to be a sparring match, but now it seemed like she was actually trying to kill him. That's when he realized how lenient she had been with Ma-Yun. She continued her assault, swinging her sword with serious intent. He shouted at her, calling her a madwoman, and begged her to calm down a bit. Yura was deeply offended when Yum-Yong called her a madwoman. He quickly tried to fix what he said, assuring her that he hadn't meant it like that. But Yura showed no sign of understanding. She told him that since he had used such a word, he would now have to face the edge of her sword. Yum-Yong began retreating, blocking her strikes as best he could. But the more he defended, the more irritated Yura became. He grew nervous as he noticed sparks flying and her rage intensifying. Suddenly, she lunged at him, shouting and demanding to know how he dared to hide his true power all this time. Yum-Yong panicked. He had no idea how she figured out that he was holding back. Then, to his shock, she unleashed her sword aura. He realized that while she had only defended against Ma-Yun earlier, she was now fighting him seriously, using her sword aura in full force. The blow was so powerful that it sent him flying. He crashed to the ground and Yura walked toward him, saying she knew he was just pretending to be defeated to hide his real strength. Still furious, she demanded that he stop pretending and fight seriously. Yum-Yong, trying to sound pitiful, replied that he never faked his fights and had already used all the strength he had. But Yura grew even more frustrated, asking why he kept denying that he was holding back. In his mind, Yumyong recalled their encounter from his previous life, telling himself that he hadn't faked anything, he simply didn't care about winning this fight. At that moment, Yura unleashed an even fiercer wave of sword aura, declaring that if he was trying to deceive her, she wouldn't hesitate to kill him, just like it seemed he wanted. Joe Chill, watching nearby, trembled in fear for his master's life. He thought that if Yumyong failed to block this next attack, he would surely die. Yura then charged at him with everything she had. Yumyong responded by using every technique he had learned to defend himself. To his surprise, he managed to block every one of her strikes. When Yura stepped back for a moment, Yumyong couldn't believe he had survived her onslaught, though his sword was still shaking in his grip. But Yura quickly laughed and told him he hadn't blocked anything at all. He was stunned, realizing just how outmatched he truly was. Despite being only 18, Yura was already capable of using advanced sword aura. He had always known she was far ahead of her peers, but to have reached such a level at her age was nearly unthinkable. He shut his eyes, bracing himself for the final blow. But when he opened them again, he realized he was still alive. He heard a sharp voice scolding Yura, saying she had lost control of her emotions and had nearly killed the boy with that last attack. Yumyong was stunned when he saw the man behind the voice. He immediately bowed. It was Taijong, the former clan leader. Taijong continued speaking to Yura, warning her that she had nearly sparked a holy war between the clans. Yumyong noted that Taijong was the third person in the sect's long history to hold the title of Supreme Sovereign. He was also the 28th leader of the sect and its current Grand Elder. Taijong told Yura that if a holy war broke out with the Jin clan, their allies would immediately intervene. At that point, the sect's forces would be scattered and the Merm Alliance would be waiting for just such a moment to strike. Yumyong thought to himself that Taijong might have been exaggerating a bit, but he hadn't said anything untrue. He also added mentally that Yura probably didn't realize one crucial fact. His father, Jin Jian, the leader of the Jin clan, would never start a civil war just because he had lost hope in a son who ended up dead. Taijong asked Yura to apologize to Yumyong. It was clear that this request was incredibly difficult for her, but in the end, she had no choice but to obey. She gave him a reluctant apology, her face still filled with anger. Yum responded by saying it was nothing, as if nothing had happened. Inwardly, he muttered that he never imagined he'd see the day when the cold-hearted leader of the demon sect would apologize to anyone. Taijong then turned to Yumyong and said it seemed the Jin clan had raised a respectable heir, asking if he was the candidate the clan had sent. Yumyong respectfully replied that the clan had deemed him unfit and its leader had chosen to give the position of heir to his younger brother instead. Taijong was stunned by the answer and asked in disbelief how someone with his strength could be considered unfit, especially since he was certain Yumyong had used sword aura during his fight with Yura. Taijong scoffed and asked mockingly, "Can someone unqualified display that kind of power?" He asked again if Yumyong truly wasn't the clan's official heir. Yumyong insisted it was true, explaining that he was only here to fulfill what the Jin clan saw as its duty. Taijong replied that, in that case, he should see that duty through to the end, leaving Yumyong confused as he walked away. Taijong said that when the next exchange meeting was scheduled, the Jin clan would be notified. He added that he hoped Yumyong and Yura would get along better the next time they met. When he noticed Yumyong staying silent, he gave him a sharp look and asked why he wasn't answering. Yumyong replied respectfully that he understood, but inside he felt like his fate had just been sealed. As he walked off, Taijong muttered to himself that it had been a long time since he last met the Jin clan leader, perhaps it was time to visit and share a drink. After that, Yura told Yumyong that she knew he hated her and that was why he acted the way he did earlier. But he cut her off, telling her he didn't hate her at all. On the contrary, he said he admired her. He quickly clarified that it wasn't romantic admiration, it could be seen as respect. He added that his actions today had nothing to do with her personally. Yura asked him to relax a bit, saying that during exchange periods they were equals, so he didn't need to address her so formally. Yum was stunned and asked what she wanted him to call her. She didn't seem to have a clear answer. He told her he had a suggestion, he'd simply call her Yura from now on. The scene shifted to Yumyong leaving with Joe Chill, who began praising him enthusiastically, saying his performance today was incredible and that his father would be thrilled when he heard the news. But Yumyong looked displeased, his plan to enter seclusion and train had clearly failed. Then, to his surprise, his brother Yunwoo appeared. Yumyong laughed and asked why he had come in person. Yunwoo replied that he had heard Yumyong went to the training room before heading to the young demon's hall. He added that he was sure Yumyong wasn't aiming for the heir position. Yum confirmed it and said he understood the rules well. Yunwoo responded that there was no rule preventing someone from building a relationship with the young leader of the demon sect. Then, nervously, he said he would never acknowledge Yumyong as his brother and that he didn't belong to the Jin clan. Seeing the rising tension, Jo Chil stepped in and tried to calm Yunwoo down, saying he'd gone too far and that Yumyong had shown incredible skill today. But Yunwoo exploded at him too, shouting that a former assassin had no right to meddle in a conversation between two heirs of the Jin clan. He insisted that matters like this should only involve those who carried the clan's pure blood. Yumyong looked visibly irritated by his brother's words, feeling like he had become a genuine nuisance to him. He thought to himself that he might need to raise his brother all over again. Yunwoo scoffed and laughed, saying he must be joking. But Yumyong silently decided that his younger brother, who would one day lead the clan, needed to learn how to show him proper respect. Yumyong snapped his fingers and said they had never fought before. Yunwoo immediately lunged at him, but Yumyong dodged easily. Furious, Yunwoo accused him of running away like a rat. Yumyong mockingly replied that the real problem was his brother's inability to land even a single hit. Yunwoo's anger exploded as he released his aura and threatened to kill him. Yumyong scolded him, asking how he could speak that way to his older brother and reminded him that it was his duty to show respect. He then said he was fighting him for 3 reasons. While dodging his strikes, he explained that the first reason was this: the Yunwoo had been selected as one of the 6 demon dragons. He needed to understand there would always be someone stronger. Then Yumyong landed a direct blow to his stomach and said the second reason was that Yunwoo had dared to insult the honor of the Jin clan, a clan he was meant to lead someday. The clan members watching were stunned, wondering when this once weak boy had become so powerful. After a thorough beating, Yunwoo apologized and said he'd take Yumyong's advice to heart. He added that losing today didn't mean he would accept the same outcome in their next match. But Yumyong stopped him, saying he hadn't even revealed the third reason yet. Yunwoo froze and nervously asked what it was. Yumyong replied with a chilling expression that the third reason was simple: Yunwoo had yet to learn what true respect for an older brother looked like. Yunwoo trembled and almost cried, admitting that he just didn't know how to express that respect. But Yumyong didn't stop until he'd finished disciplining him. The scene shifted to the Jin clan leader sipping his drink and telling Yumyong that the demon sect leader hadn't stopped praising him. He added that he had personally thanked him for sending someone with talent worthy of challenging his daughter. When Yumyong was asked if he wanted to become the clan's heir, he responded that he would rather Yunwoo retain that position as he had already proven his worth more clearly before the clan. He added that his own ambition was to serve the demon sect leader and stay by her side, aiming to elevate the clan's status through that role. The clan leader then remarked that he had never realized his son took such pride in their family. Yumyong replied that while other clans were busy fighting over heirs, he and his brother were focused on creating a solid foundation for the next generation, one that would make their clan the greatest among the 6. His father, clearly pleased by this vision, asked if Yumyong truly believed he could achieve it. Yumyong responded with confidence that he could. The clan leader smiled proudly and noted that his son had matured greatly in recent times, saying that as his father, he would now give him the support he deserved. He then asked if Yumyong had any specific wishes. Later, as Yumyong walked through the city, he reminded himself that since his plan to enter secluded training had fallen through, he now had to begin investigating the true identity of the society that defied the heavens. He believed the current leader of the demon sect ruled with tyranny, so the group must have been operating in secret. He began narrowing down the potential suspects, trying to figure out which of the great clans might be behind the organization, but he still had no definitive answers. He concluded that anything he uncovered during this investigation could become a valuable piece of leverage to use against Yura one day. Then he turned to find his brother quietly following him and asked why he'd been trailing him all this time. Yunwoo, chewing on an apple, said he was simply curious about how Yumyong had grown so strong. Yumyong looked uncertain, not sure whether taking his brother along was a good idea, but eventually answered while walking ahead that all he had done was take care of his body and that strength would come naturally with time. Yunwoo quickly caught up and asked where they were headed. Yumyong told him they were going to the black market. Yunwoo was stunned, pointing out that the black market was infamous for dealing in illegal goods and for being full of people who followed their own rules. Yumyong replied that in the demon sect, the term illegal didn't apply. It was more that there were certain things the sect didn't want regular people to find out, so they kept them hidden. In essence, the black market operated under the control of one of the major clans. The place they were headed to was the Hidden Gold Pavilion, the center of the black market. Once they arrived and people inside the pavilion gathered, they welcomed Yamong and his brother, asking why they had come. Yamong, in a sarcastic tone, said it was obvious they were there for something shady and requested to see the person in charge. The man he addressed gave him a sly look and introduced himself as Ojong, the leader of the Hidden Gold Pavilion. Yumyang's tone instantly turned serious. He told Ojong that if he truly planned to deal with the eldest son of the Jin clan, a representative from the Saklan should have been present. Ojong was startled and asked how he knew about that. Yamong pretended to be confused, asking what he meant, then added, as if guessing, "Are you surprised I know this is the intelligence base of the Saklan?" Ojong's face turned pale at those words. He released his aura and demanded to know clearly this time where Yamong had gotten that information. But Yamong struck him across the face, saying he was incredibly rude and obviously lacked respect for his elders despite having no issue raising his hand against them. He asked how a mere servant of the Saklan dared to show killing intent toward him. Then he ordered him to reveal the weapon hidden in his clothes. At that moment, a young woman intervened, telling Yamong that he had done enough. She was Sabune, a direct descendant of the Saklan. She appeared shocked that Yamyang knew things even some members of her clan didn't and wondered if the Jin clan's intelligence network was stronger than theirs. She then asked what had brought him there. Yamong explained that recently strange things had been happening in the Red Lantern district and in the back alleys. He said the name that kept appearing was Dark Blood. At the mention of the name, both Sabune and Ojong looked stunned. Sabune asked how he had come across that information. He replied that one of the girls he had been spending time with had shared a lot with him. Sabune, now irritated, asked if all his information came from girls. Yamong clarified that dark blood was a disease that would soon spread across the demon sect. He added that someone was deliberately orchestrating these events. Sabune, her expression filled with sorrow, said that dark blood had originated from outside the sect. Despite all the support she'd received from her clan, they still couldn't trace its source. Their closest guess was that a subsidiary sect linked to one of the major clans was behind it. After hearing Sabune's explanation, Yamyang turned to his younger brother and said he had expected more precise intel from the Saklan's intelligence network. He then announced it was time to leave. But before they could, Sabune called out to him. Yamyang immediately realized his plan had worked. Turning around, he asked what she wanted. She replied that she had decided to share their findings with him and that they would send a representative to the Jin clan for further discussions. Yamong smiled, thanked her, and assured her that he would take full responsibility moving forward. Then he exited the pavilion. The scene then shifted to Yura, who was reflecting on a past conversation with her father. He had mentioned that Yamyang didn't seem to be fighting at full strength during their match. She had asked if he was sure Yamyang was taking the battle seriously. Her father replied that although it might sound odd, Yumyang's eyes weren't focused on victory, or even the fight itself. His gaze had been fixed entirely on her. In the present, Yura emotionally admitted that hearing this from her father had made her start viewing Yamyang in a new light. The story then moved to Yunro Valley, a lawless area that most clans avoided at all costs. Yamyang told one of the Saklan's intelligence agents that to catch a tiger, one must enter its den. The agent nervously responded that they might end up being devoured in there. Yamyang replied that he could go report that cowardice to Sabune, prompting the agent to quickly apologize and follow silently. He then asked if Yamyang truly expected to gather intel in a place like this. Yamyang raised a finger to his nose and told him to watch closely. Sometimes it was actually easier to get information in places like these. Yamyang mentioned that he had a strong feeling someone had been watching them for quite some time. He added that if the surveillance continued once they moved deeper into the valley, he wouldn't just ignore it. Soon, they observed a large number of plants growing all around and began to wonder if someone had been cultivating them. The agent remarked that he felt an odd attraction to the place and said that even though they had been exiled from the sect, the valley gave off a strangely calming effect. Yamyang informed him that those plants were marijuana and it was clear someone from the inside was helping to maintain them. Suddenly, a group of men appeared and blocked their path. One of them made a mocking comment, saying they had a lot of nerve walking into the area with such confidence. He warned that if they didn't want any trouble, they should turn back right away. Yamyang thought to himself that everyone in the group, except the boy standing at the center, were just low-grade thugs. He responded with confidence, saying they weren't leaving as he had come to meet their leader. The leader of the group replied that he had originally considered letting them pass since they looked like nobles, but it seemed they were asking for trouble. He then ordered his men to attack, telling them they could break their arms or whatever else they liked. The agent, nervous, told Yumyong that fighting wasn't his area of expertise. Yumyong answered that he hadn't expected anything from him in the first place and added that if he were to die here, the rest of them would be in serious danger. As our MC was going towards his destination, we came to see an old man who was saying what a special occasion to think you would bring guests with you. As he was saying this, one of the disciples spoke and added, "I apologize, third elder." The third elder says it's an honor to meet a noble from one of the 6 clans. Yo, you young, hearing what the third elder said, replied mockingly, "But where exactly? If you guess correctly, I will grant you a generous reward in our clan's name." Hearing what you're saying, the elder in his mind, 6 clans equals wealth equals influence, now where could it be? He boldly asked, "Aren't you from Hidden Shadow Clan?" The old guy asked, "What made you think that?" He answered, "Well, if we trace back to our supplier, it's the Huan clan, and the Hidden Shadow SP clan has never had a good relationship with the Huan clan for generations." MC laughing slightly says, "Ah, so the heaven-shaking Huan clan were behind these bastards, and unfortunately you are wrong, my name is Jin Yumyong." Finding his real name, the elder gets shocked and speaks Demon Heaven Jin clan, and also the first young master, at that, I mean, with that physique, how is that possible? You defeated all of them. MC's assistant sees what he is doing and also sees the shock on the old man's face. She mentions, "What a moment, but is it okay to reveal your identity like this? What if they are the suppliers of the black clotted blood?" The old man, speaking in a firm tone, said, "If we squash them with my clan's power, that's the end of it, and what brings the Nobel of the Jin family to a place like this?" But in the background, we can see the elder sweating at the mention of black clotted blood. Yumyong, claiming, "I heard the source of the drug is here, so I want to hear a bit about it," and after that he threw a bag of money towards the third elder and said, "That is to lighten that tongue of yours a bit." The old man's eyes light up seeing the bag full of gold. He willingly opens his mouth and speaks, "So the black clotted blood is an item that comes from outside, and while it passes through here, it doesn't touch our hands. All we do is make drugs to supply to the Huan clan. We don't distribute it to the entertainment district or the alleys." MC asked, "Then who are the one distributing it?" It's the lower sect of the Julio, the Tyrant Wolf sect. They are the primary distributor." As they were talking, someone shouted while running, "There's a problem." Third elder, "It's the intruders." MC thinks long and hers and says, "Do you mean by us?" The scene takes us to Yura, who's standing among pile of dead body. One of the bandits runs to his boss and exclaimed, "Team leader, it seems that the young cult leader has appeared. Do." The leader, waking from his sleep, says, "Did you start drinking early in the morning?" The leader's name is Jayadin Jyangi, Orthodox Path Alliance spy, but squad's 17th team leader. The underling responded, "No, sir. Do you really think I could do something like that?" She had cut down about a dozen men who stood in her way in a single, sweeping strike, and those men were from none other than the venomous snail sect. The leader said, "Then even if she's not the young cult leader, she must be a major figure among the 6 clans, right?" Thinking it over, he continued, "Let's see, aside from the young cult leader, what women from the 6 clans wield that kind of power? There's Soya from the So clan, Sabidian from the Sa clan, and maybe the twins from the Pa clan." He paused, then added, "Surely it couldn't be the one we're targeting right now." Then he gave an order to gather the kids. The underling, full of energy, responded, "Yes. I'll call in the 17th team from the spy squad immediately." The leader corrected him, saying, "Not our kids, you idiot. I meant the killing demons dispatched from above. For a smooth supply of the black clotted blood, we need to call the killer squad." Meanwhile, Yura was watching Yomyong from behind a house when her subordinate warned, "If we get too close, we might get caught." Yura replied, "I know. And this is a huge cannabis cultivation area. Why has our cult left such a place untouched? Don't you want to know?" Her subordinate explained, "It's because it's a necessary material for the Huan clan's formations. Also, by leaving the defenses loose here, they aim to lure in external intruders and eliminate them easily." Hearing that, Yura added, "Did Jin Yomyong come here already knowing all of that? Keep up the pursuit." Her subordinate, baffled, whispered, "Young cult leader, why?" Yura spoke, "I want to understand what that guy is thinking. I kind of like the way he thinks." Then she added, "His lordship once told me that since I naturally have many enemies, learning to distinguish friend from foe is essential." In the background, her subordinate, clearly impressed, thought to himself, the young cult leader really cares about her role and responsibilities. Yura suddenly burst into wild laughter, startling her subordinate. She said, but above all, doesn't this seem fun? If a recluse really exists, there's a good chance he's hiding somewhere like this. I'd love to meet him just once. Let's go. Her subordinate exclaimed, there are plenty of recluses around. Like the elder from the Chon clan. Looking around, Yura remarked, but it's odd. Not only is there no recluse, but while anyone else could just walk in here, I keep getting blocked by someone. Yeomyung, frustrated, muttered, what recluse? That gaze I kept sensing, it was from the young cult leader, wasn't it? Ha! Then he turned to her and said, for now, let's go together. As they talked, some men suddenly appeared out of nowhere. One of them commented, this is wild. I didn't think the guy was telling the truth, but it turns out he was. With her hand on her chin, Yura remarked, here they. All you need to do is come along quickly. The other bandits, afraid, flee while saying, then please excuse us, please. Wifa says to her future husband that he looks like a beggar from the beggar clan. The MC replies, then we should spare that bastard. He seems to have a lot we can extract from him. And boy, oh boy, who would have thought we'd find a lead this quickly? Someone, using her brain, spoke, dark shadow, protective shadow, fist shadow. Yura, speaking to the MC's assistant, said, Bayan, assist me, will you? She opened her mask and responded, yes, young cult leader. Then she gave the order, dark butterflies, come forward and protect young master Jin Yeomyung. At her command, many women stood beside him, swords in hand, prepared to guard him. The man was more shocked than surprised at the sight of what followed. He murmured, Chilo, was Sa Bayan? The enemy leader smirked, ugh, that's a cult strategy. But none of your protective hall's escorts are at the peak level, young cult leader. On our side, however, we have an exceptional master who is at the peak. Yer mocked him and added, you sure know a lot about our cult, ahaha. Of course you do, especially when it comes to the Cheon family. Cheon family's masters, huh? Then listen closely, you insects, not a single one of you will make it out of this 100,000 great mountain alive. She spoke while releasing her aura, striking fear into everyone as they launched a hasty attack. Yer began slashing through the fighters like they were butter. She even felt joy at their helplessness and laughed while saying, you insects. The enemy leader, frustrated, muttered to himself, I can't let it end like this. He clenched his teeth and shouted at the MC, you. At the very least, I will kill you. With that, he launched an all-out attack. Yeomyung, watching the pathetic villain, laughed and commented, seriously? Can't he see how many guards I have right now? To act that recklessly, he must be stupid. But at the very moment the villain began his attack, all the bodyguards suddenly moved away, leaving Yeomyung alone, making him even more shocked. Meanwhile, as the villain shouted, Jin Yeomyung, die. Yeomyung thought, shit. Even if he's past his prime, he's still a peak-level expert. And it's too late to dodge. Drawing his sword, Yeomyung somehow managed to block the incoming axe strike. The blow was so powerful that he was sent flying. He remarked, man, I was supposed to look cool and now look at me, I'm on the ground. In his mind, he groaned, can't wait to hear the laughter. Yura's subordinates, clearly impressed, said, he blocked it. How is that possible? The MC, frustrated, shouted, why aren't you dead, you crazy psycho? You don't just say crap like that to someone, you should have had your skull split open and died right there. Hearing this, the villain was shocked. And as this intense exchange went on between the MC and the villain, Yura approached silently from behind and, in one swift move, cut the villain's head off. She commented, as expected, your level is more than enough to endure that. Yeomyung, dazed, muttered, what? So she was testing me on purpose. Then he shouted, well, are you satisfied now that you've confirmed my skill? Yura replied, very much so. You should know, the higher-ups often test people in ways like this. MC said, sure, but still. Bam! Heavenly Demon Divine Cult. The Murim spy leader, caught and desperate, shouted, damn it! Just kill me already. Yeomyung responded, kill you? Why would I do that to someone who's about to provide valuable testimony on the black-colored blood? The leader replied, finally, what are you talking about? Black spot blood. He added, say what you want, but I guess I really am part of the demonic cult after all. While I might have slacked off on martial arts, there were a few techniques I was highly motivated to master. You know, especially the tendon-ripping bone lock. I practiced that one very thoroughly. Hearing Yeomyung's words, The leader's face turned pale in fear. MC, delighted, said, "Please stay quiet, okay? This is my first time doing this for real, and I'd like to enjoy it a bit. Now then, why don't we start off nice and easy?" Meanwhile, Yura was speaking with Madame Sa. "Sorry about that. I dragged you into this unnecessarily." She replied, "It's fine. Young Master Jean accepted your apology after all." Madame Sa, pointing toward MC, asked, Young Master Jean?" Yura responded, "HM? What is it, Miss Black Flying Seventh Tiger?" She continued, "If young Master Jean manages to pass the young cult leader's test all the way through, what will you do then?" Yura answered, "Then I suppose I'll try chasing one of the dreams I once gave up on." As Yomi-young continued interrogating the prisoner, the man spoke in fear. "I'll tell you everything I know. Just please, stop doing this." MC said, "Yai, hang in there a bit longer." Yura muttered to herself, "I understand now, he's not doing all this just over a courtesan." Speak of the devil, and he appeared before her. He said, "My dear leader, that guy Jian Myangi really is from the beggar gang. His superior seems to have partnered with someone from the Cheon clan, but even Jian Myangi doesn't know who it is." Hearing that, Yura exclaimed, "The Cheon clan is involved in the drug case? And the men he brought with him came from the hidden trace manor in Gurya Fortress?" Madame Sa added, "The third elder mentioned Gurya Fortress too. Hidden Trace Manor is a faction established 50 years ago by a retired member of the Ghost Slayer unit." Yura, confused, asked, "Ghost Slayer? Who are they?" Yomi-young explained, "That's the same unit Guchil used to be part of." He continued, "Yes, it was the Cheon clan's elite assassination unit. It's been disbanded now, but it used to be known as the Demon Emperor's Ghost Slayer unit." MC suggested, "Young cult leader, I believe it would be best if you returned for now. Ever since the ambush, this situation has gone far beyond what we can manage alone. And considering how these people operate in cells, Hidden Trace Manor probably isn't even their main base." Pointing in a direction, he added, "If they lose contact, they'll erase all traces and vanish." Lady Sa asked, "What will you do now, young Master Jean?" MC replied, "A few variables have come up, but I'll start again from the lower sect, like the Tyrant Wolf sect, for example." Yura mentioned there was a better way. The issue, she pointed out, was that whether it's law enforcement, the courts, or anyone else, no one really has the time to assemble a full force for an assault, right? Yomi-young nodded. "That's right." Yura then suggested, "Then I'll go to them myself. If it's an official visit by the young cult leader, they won't be able to pull anything shady so openly." Yomi-young responded, "No. I can't let you risk your life over something like this." Yura spoke firmly, "You think this is nothing?" The MC replied, "Compared to the value of your life? Yes, it is nothing." Yura then said, "But because of me, your plan got thrown off. I just want to make up for that." Yomi-young in his thoughts said, "This is why I fell for her." The scene then shifts to a new location. We are now at the outer edges of the 10,000 mountains. Suddenly, Yura kicked the entrance of the sect with full force and walked right in. The third master of Hidden Trace Manor was stunned as he witnessed this. He exclaimed, "What the hell? The young cult leader, why is she here?" In his mind, he thought in a commanding tone, "I was just about to pull out after the mess in Hidden Tear Valley. Never thought our kidnapping target would waltz in herself." The third leader, putting on a cunning and flattering smile, called out to Yura, "Please, come. Welcome, young cult leader. To what do we owe the honor of your visit?" Yura replied, "Your grandfather was part of the Demon Emperor's Ghost Slayer unit, wasn't he? I realized I've been neglecting those who once served the Cheon clan. I thought it was time to fix that. And you all look quite busy, though." As she spoke with the third leader, everyone was giving her sidelong glances. She remarked, "It almost looks like you're packing up to leave in a hurry. Aren't you going to offer a guest a cup of tea?" The third leader laughed and responded, "In the 10,000 mountains, the young cult leader is never just a guest. Please come inside. I'll guide you personally." As she began following the master inside, a group of assassins kept their eyes trained on her. They whispered among themselves. One asked, "What should we do?" The assassination master replied, "Since we've been given another chance, we must capture her alive this time." The subordinate replied with a nod, "Understood." Yura commented, "Judging by all the wear and tear around here, you must get quite a few visitors through this place." The old master laughed heartily. "Ha ha ha ha, now then, young cult leader, eh?" Suddenly, Yura shouted from behind, "Use proper honorifics, you arrogant bastard." He was baffled by what she said. "Kikiki," he chuckled mockingly. "We both know what's really going on here, so why pretend?" With that, his soldiers pointed their swords toward Yura. He said, "If you surrender quietly, I won't have to get rough with you." Yura replied, "Got it. Now I see your level clearly." The old master taunted her, "You catch one member of the life-slaying unit and suddenly think you're unstoppable? Don't assume this is all I've got." With that, the entire structure of the building began to transform. Yura, shocked, spoke, "Is this a mechanical formation technique?" The old leader makes the situation clear by saying, "Dear young cult leader, you should know it's called a maze pursuing killing formation. Oh, you think I brought you bitches in here without any thought?" Yura spoke, "For a scale like this, it must have required an enormous amount of money and manpower. This is definitely not something that a retired assassin could establish alone. I think I have a lot to hear from you in the future, but let me ask one thing first. Are you still the Cheon clan's dog? Or are you a traitor that has allied with the outside?" The leader, getting angry, ordered his man to attack and kill them for me. Yura, seeing the enemy coming for an attack, also goes on the offensive. She comments, "So that's your answer?" And with that, she starts her battle with all of them. A few moments later, she says to herself, "I still have a long way to go. To think I would be covered in blood against scums like these." The old leader, seeing her state, exclaimed, "She is a monster. How did you kill all of them without a scratch?" Yura mentioned, "Was it because of guys like you that I had to suffer so much?" Suddenly activating her sword technique, she told him, "If I could make your tongue show loyalty, would that be worth it?" The old villain, seeing her sword technique, exclaimed in fear, "Sword chi acupoint locking? So she intends to interrogate me?" Saying nonsense. The one who turned the loyal Ghost Slayer unit of the Cheon clan into such a state was, as HW was going to reveal the name of that person from nowhere. A swordsman attacks Yura from behind. Her soldiers shouted, "Young cult leader, watch out." Hearing there, Yura looks back only to see a masked man attacking her from the upper side of her head. She, at that moment, used her sword to block that attack with her sword. Clenching her teeth, she mentioned, "A master-level warrior. What is he doing here?" The stupid old leader, seeing his master's arrival, spoke joyfully, "You arrived, sir." Looking back, she asked the attacker, "Did you pass by me so easily?" At the moment, the old leader exclaimed while seeing the man, "That's a young cult leader. It's none other than the young cult leader." He told the person, "You must not miss this chance. Absolutely not. When that bitch I trapped in this killing formation, we must kill her." As he was talking to his master, suddenly his head started to fall from his body. When we can see it's none other than his master. The master, in a ruthless tone, speaks that it's only right to dispose of a dog that fails to hunt. Yura says to him, "I'm becoming very curious about your affiliation. Now, if you tell me honestly, I will personally use my personal wealth and inform the entire Central Plains." The guy giving her proposal, no second thought, replied, "Right, I guess I can just put in a request at the beggar clan," and with that, he cleared up the suspicion of the ties between them and the beggar sect. Her soldiers, worried for her, says, "Will he really reveal it?" Another one says, "Young cult leader, that guy is dangerous." Yura replied, "I know. That's why I'm curious. I wonder how strong I'm compared to a master who can use enhanced sword chi." The information that the young leader of the demonic cult put her life on the line will sell for quite a high price. Yura, making it clear, relayed, "That's what you call confidence. You stupid villain bastard." Hearing her comments towards him, he attacks Yura and comments, "It's more like arrogance, you foolish novice." Yura, using all her strength, somehow stopped his strike while using her own strike. The villain, surprised, smirks in surprise? "You endured that?" Yura says, The heavenly demonic divine art does not fall short against any cultivation technique, at least not in power, even with a difference in levels." The villain's furious remarks, "It seems so, however. Regardless of talent, the gap in experience cannot be narrowed." He thrusts his sword super fast towards Yura, which is hardly noticeable to the naked eye. At a certain moment, unable to parry his sword strike, she falls down to the ground, but with her strong willpower, she quickly stands up on her feet. Mr. Villain, seeing her fighting spirit, comments, "A young demon has been growing in the heavenly demonic divine cult." He adds, "That person has ordered to capture you alive. But if I don't eliminate you today, there will surely be a great consequence." Yura, gasping for breath because of the fight, still confusedly asked that person, "Who do you mean to speak of?" Giving no answer to her, he says again, 20 years. I might have to feed you a deadly poison in order to get rid of you." Yura told him, "Your eyes seem to be working properly." Hearing her, he laughs maniacally and says, "That's exactly why you will die today." She again mentions her past, thinking that I actually knew that there would be a mechanical formation set up here and the possibility that there would be a master beyond my capabilities. The master laughingly says, "Yet knowing that you still came here." She, complying with someone, relayed, "If there was one thing I was wrong about, it would be the difference in opinions with that bastard." He seeks clarity of her mention of that bastard person. At that moment, Yura pointing MC, she says, "It ain't that right. Jin Yomianf?" He, complying with her, he says to her, "I told you that. They will be more aware of your value as a person than of the value of being the young cult leader. Now that you've tried fighting against him, how is it?" She replied that they were certainly troublesome, and it was no surprise that the 9 sects were held in such high regard. Jin asked if she was certain the man was one of the 9 sections. She responded that his sword style was entirely different from theirs. Jin reassured Yura, saying that as long as he was there was no need to worry. Meanwhile, the opponents started doubting Jin's identity, wondering if he truly belonged to the Maon Jin family. The assassin was just about to explain that he had no choice but to kill Jin, but his words were suddenly cut off by a hidden weapon thrown at him. He narrowly dodged it at the last moment, stunned to realize that Jin had anticipated his move. The assassin was shocked when Jin told him that the so-called maze of pursuit and death was now under his control. Jin then asked why he thought he had come alone, revealing that the rest of the enemy's forces had been lured away, leaving him without support. Jin then challenged his opponent, asking whether he truly aimed to do the impossible and overturn the heavens themselves. The opponent was stunned by Jin's words as though they had touched a nerve, triggering a fear or doubt he couldn't hide. Yura, surprised, asked Jin what he meant by those words that had clearly rattled their enemy. But Jin avoided giving her a direct answer, telling her only to focus on staying alive in that place. Jin warned Yura of the danger. They might not feel it yet, but flames were already burning outside, held back only by the barrier. If they delayed any longer, they would all be consumed by the fire. The assassin, noticing in astonishment that Jin had not tried to escape despite the rising danger, smiled and said he would return that courage with respect. He introduced himself as Goguen from Changxiang, ready to fight. Jin realized that revealing his identity meant Goguen was truly determined to kill them. He began to wonder whether the Changxiang sect was actually behind everything. Goguen then lunged at Jin in fury, mocking him and shouting that he should go to hell and ask the Lord of the Dead for answers himself. Yura asked Jin if he could match her movements in the upcoming battle. He answered that he believed he could. She simply replied, "Good," and the two of them began moving swiftly to face their enemy together. Jin used his knowledge of the terrain to distract Goguen, throwing weapons whenever he could to keep him from closing in. During the fight, Yura gave a quick signal for Jin to move to the right. He knew that directly blocking Goggen's attacks would be futile no matter how hard they tried. When Yura launched her attacks, she was quick and decisive. Jin knew that if he stepped in at just the right moment during her strikes, they could divide their enemy's attention and improve their chances. Goguen clenched his teeth in frustration. Just then, orders came from Lady Bayan to open fire and provide cover. Goguen was shocked to realize they had reinforcements offering support during the fight. Yura smiled with admiration, commenting that Jin's performance was truly impressive. Jin felt relieved that everything was going exactly as he had envisioned. Yura began to grasp the danger and rhythm hidden within their opponent's sword style. At that moment, Goguen realized he wouldn't be able to defeat them unless he risked his life too. The fight was no longer a simple one. Goguen quietly justified to himself that he had been avoiding using major techniques because of the mechanical formation in the area, but now he had no other choice. Yura then urged Jin to escape, telling him not to worry about capturing Goguen alive. She promised to hold him off just long enough for Jin to get away. Goguen launched a devastating attack using his giant chai sword, demonstrating his overwhelming combat skills and fierce resolve to destroy them both. Jin and Yura exchanged a look of trust and defiance. Jin declared that they would live or die together, ready to fight to the very end. The enemy sneered, calling them a pathetic pair, then roared in rage and commanded them to die together. They launched a strong counterattack together, clashing with their opponent as a massive explosion shook the battlefield. Pain was clearly visible on Jin's face, a sign of the intense force and shock he had endured in the collision. Goguen quickly regained control of the fight and admitted he was impressed by their strength. He said that things might go differently in another encounter, though he doubted they would ever meet again. Despite his condition, Jin smiled defiantly and said that sacrificing his life would only serve the greater scheme of his enemy. This earned Gogen's reluctant respect for Jin's bravery. Suddenly, an unexpectedly powerful elder appeared and struck Gogen with a heavy blow, yelling furiously and asking if he truly understood who he was dealing with. Then the high-ranking guard, Wu Chang'e, arrived late and visibly shaken. He apologized for his brief absence, which had led to the crisis. Yura scolded him for being late, saying he had arrived only after everything had gone horribly wrong. Guard Wu appeared deeply regretful, trying to justify his absence, insisting he had never imagined so much damage could happen in such a short span. Jin sharply rebuked him, reminding him that as a guardian, it was his duty to protect the sect's leaders and members no matter the situation. Jin ordered everyone to put aside the current issue and focus on interrogating the enemy who had claimed to be a high-ranking member of the Changxiang sect. He suggested this might be part of a broader conspiracy to spark a massive war. In the chaos and confusion, the guard mistakenly killed Gogen while trying to protect Yura. The moment he realized what he had done, he dropped to his knees and repeatedly apologized for the unintended act. Jin watched the guard closely, a sense of suspicion rising within him. A troubling thought crept into Jin's mind: what if the guard had killed Gogen on purpose rather than by accident? He suddenly remembered that this guard wasn't just any protector. He was Wu Chang'e, also known as the red-faced demon of battle Wang Qiang, one of the sect's highest-ranking and most powerful warriors. He also recalled that all of the sect's top guardians would betray it 20 years in the future, but at this point in time, Wang Chang'e had already retired. Given the current situation, Jin found no clear signs of betrayal for now. Yura admitted to Jin that she bore responsibility for the disgraceful circumstances and expressed her shame for making a reckless decision to fight. She vowed to repay her debt to Jin no matter what, looking at him with deep sincerity and unwavering resolve. Jin turned to his aide, Gachil, asking about the results of the investigation after the massive fire that had destroyed most of the evidence. Gachil stepped from the shadows and informed Jin that the fire had destroyed almost all of the crucial information and that the losses were severe. However, he added that despite the damage, they had recovered an important letter from the body of the defeated enemy which might contain vital intelligence. Jin took the letter, feeling a rare sense of satisfaction after all they had endured, hoping it might be the key to confronting the next phase of the conspiracy. When Jin opened the letter, his face clearly reflected shock and disbelief, revealing the seriousness of its contents. The letter contained an order to assassinate someone named Chan Ilgwin, and Jin immediately recognized the gravity of the plot. He felt shaken and confused as he read it, internally questioning the significance and danger surrounding the intended target. Jin explained to Gachil that he had decided to use their current location as a temporary base, since they had lost their previous stronghold. He then informed Gachil that they would need to separate for a while, a decision that left Gachil deeply saddened and anxious. Gachil cried out in shock, unable to believe that he'd have to be away from his master for such a long time. Finally, urgent news arrived. It was announced that hazardous substances, such as black blood, had been discovered within the sect's territory, prompting the leaders to enforce martial law without delay and with firm determination. The heavenly demon issued his orders in a commanding voice, declaring that the sect's fury must be ruthless and unrelenting, yet sharply directed. His words inspired both fear and reverence among those present. The sect leader appeared, underlining the importance of identifying traitors within the ranks, suggesting that some members merely pretended to be virtuous. Chain directed the left guard to look into a particular issue and uncover the truth behind what had been troubling him. The guard respectfully acknowledged the command and affirmed he would act on it immediately. Meanwhile, within the Ma Cha-on-Jin clan, a member spoke with enthusiasm about the clan leader's son joining Chan Ilgwin, believing it would bolster their clan's position. However, the leader reacted with fury, shouting angrily upon hearing that his son wished to join Chan Ilgwin. In a fit of rage, he slammed the table, cursing his son and calling him insane, insisting he was meant to join the demonic Dragon Hall instead. Jin remarked that his brother Yuan was already sufficient to manage affairs within the demonic Dragon Hall and stated he would take on the responsibility of recruiting talent for Chan Ilgwin. His statement was met with ridicule and disbelief, with others questioning why Jin would go to such an unworthy place for such a task. Jin clarified that his true goal was not what they assumed, it was to find promising individuals before clans like Ma or Ba could recruit them. He explained that most young people in the demonic Dragon Hall were already tied to families, and even those who weren't usually got absorbed into the Chan clan, not the Jin clan. It was mentioned that Ma Kail-su had once joined Cheon Ilyuan, which led the clan leader to suspect his son of having similar intentions. The son confidently responded, affirming that he was just as capable as Ma Kail-su. The leader was taken aback by his son's convincing reply and admitted there was truth in his words. The son assured his father that, with the proper backing, he could attract many talented individuals and expand the clan's power. His brother rushed toward him in disbelief, asking if he had lost his mind and protesting against the decision to apply to Chan Ilgwin. Jin smiled and replied that more than 10 people had already criticized his decision that same day. His brother continued to object, emphasizing that a member from the main bloodline joining Chan Ilgwin would lead to their family being sidelined. Other clan members voiced concern over the eldest son's exile, justifying it by saying he had endangered the young sect leader's life. The brother insisted again that joining Cheon Ilgwin would be a step down for their family. But the son confidently answered that his real aim was to undergo the original, harsh training method. It was explained that this strict training produced warriors who were fanatically devoted to combat and becoming truly powerful. The brother, puzzled, asked why his siblings suddenly desired martial strength, especially since he wasn't pursuing clan leadership. The son replied with determination that he needed to gain true power, adding that a great storm was approaching and he had to be ready. His brother bid him farewell, urging him to stay committed to his training. Jin stood alone, feeling the weight and isolation of the new path he had chosen. Elsewhere, Jin spoke with Sayan, asking if she had heard of his decision. Jin confirmed that his choice to join was made for survival, that he didn't want to die a meaningless death. Sa asked whether his decision was truly only for self-defense, surprised by what he said. The son spoke with passion about how the sect earned its status through strength, declaring that he wanted to reach the minimum level needed to stand beside the young sect leader. Sa responded with visible astonishment, noting the striking similarity between him and the young sect leader in terms of ambition. At the same time, the young sect leader herself was preparing for a major trial, determined to prove her strength and secure her status. Sa smiled, stating that once the young leader completed her training, she would compare her accomplishments directly to Jin's, hinting at a future rivalry. Jin was stunned when he received a mysterious message that sounded like a clear death threat. At the summit of White Lotus Mountain, students struggled to climb the treacherous slope under their instructor's strict supervision. One instructor shouted harshly, declaring that their future was simple: either reach the summit or die. The students complained about the cruelty and madness of it all, while one brave girl swore vengeance on those who had put her in such a brutal position. She recalled the instructor's cold words, reaffirming to herself that failure would mean death. Though she tried to push forward, the girl began to lose balance and started falling. In that terrifying moment, she truly believed she would die. But at the last second, one of her fellow students caught her, saving her life. The boy who had saved her smiled gently and asked if she was okay, showing both bravery and compassion. The girl shyly thanked him, and the boy responded that helping one another was everyone's duty here. His face turned red when the girl called him a hero, and he insisted he didn't deserve such a title. She told him that as long as he acted with justice and honor, he truly did deserve it. The boy nervously replied that the term hero didn't really fit in a place like this, and he remained wary of their dangerous surroundings. The girl suddenly remembered the harsh reality of the demonic sect they had joined, realizing how foolish it was to believe in heroism here. The students whispered about how the son of a powerful family had been exiled to this place and speculated whether there was a deeper reason for his arrival. The girl concluded that she must steer clear of the exile at all costs and resolved to be more careful and avoid trouble. Gachil tried to persuade Jin to stay, asking sadly whether he truly had to leave. But Jin responded firmly that his decision was final and told Gachil to stop complaining. Gachil pleaded that they were like one body and couldn't be separated. Jin ignored him and ordered him to follow instructions, emphasizing that there was still plenty of work to be done inside. As he entered, Jin noticed that the new students had sharp, focused eyes. Though he couldn't yet judge their martial skills, he observed that each likely had their own reasons for striving, be it ambition, envy, or a sense of duty. He hoped that at least one among them would rise above the rest. One of the instructors greeted the newcomers warmly, commenting on the fire and determination in their expressions. The students whispered among themselves, finding the instructor's demeanor strange and somewhat unsettling. Then, the Cheon leader appeared, terrifying in presence, and harshly threatened the students, demanding complete attention and discipline. He was known as the fog prison beast, Jo Jinsang. The students trembled in fear due to his overwhelming pressure and blunt threats. Jo told them that Cheon wasn't simply a school. It was a place where only the strongest could survive. He pointed out that their senior peers had already surpassed them in a short time and asked what made those students different. Jin observed that the difference was in the scars on their bodies and the expressions in their eyes, shaped by the brutal trials they had endured. Jo praised Jin for his insight and explained that those seniors had survived real battles. Jin was especially shocked when he noticed a familiar face among the students. His surprise and suspicion were intense. He confirmed it was Sandojin, someone he never expected to encounter in such a place. Jin remembered with admiration that Sandojin was undoubtedly talented. He had risen above his humble beginnings in Kanagwan to become the commander of the Demon Wind Unit, one of the sect's core divisions. Excitement filled Jin as he looked at Sandojin, resolute in his determination to recruit him no matter what. Jo criticized how the Slaughter King treated Jin like a son, despite his exile, even offering him a key position just days earlier. Jo had met with Jin's father, who asked if Jo was ready to join the ranks of the prominent figures before retiring. Jin's father, Jin Gunnock, stated he would nominate Jo as the next Lord of Marong Wuan once the current commander stepped down. Jo questioned the motive behind sending someone as exceptional as Jin to him, given all the opportunities Jin had received. The leaders discussed possible reasons for the Slaughter King's decision, whether it was his personal will or a direct order from either the sect leader or Jin Yong himself. Jo asked the vice-head of the hall if the command truly came from the sect leader. He noted that the young sect leader had been under disciplinary punishment following the Jiokong gang incident and suggested this might be collective punishment due to their association. They observed that the Slaughter King was not a typical man. He didn't pursue short-term gain, but seemed to focus on psychological and strategic tactics. Jo came to believe that Jin wasn't requesting any special treatment and realized Jin genuinely intended to train seriously in this place. Elsewhere, a significant figure was summoned in an abrupt and mysterious manner. Clearly annoyed by the way he was called, the summoned man was told the orders came urgently and directly from the high command. He scoffed at the urgency, questioning whether it justified ruining a mission he had dedicated years to. He admitted to himself that he couldn't overpower the person who issued the order, but was angered by the sudden interference and reminded himself of his important role. His assistant explained that the original mission was assigned to professional assassins in Jiokong, but they had been eliminated due to their connections with the young commander. The second commander asked who the target was and was told the orders had reached him because he was nearest to the target. When he inquired again, he was told the identity would be revealed privately and confidentially. Upon hearing the name, his expression showed a mix of surprise and satisfaction. The second commander laughed sarcastically, clearly mocking the contradictory nature of the new orders. He questioned why the first commander hadn't been assigned this task and concluded that perhaps the first commander had failed. With a confident smile, he declared that cleaning up this mess could elevate his status, perhaps even make him the next first commander. He firmly resolved to report to the high command that he would personally handle the mission, ensuring no loose ends. Upon returning to Chan Ilyuan, Jin Yongyong was welcomed with clear respect from Jo. Jo made it clear that, unlike Marongwan, there were no special privileges here for members of the 6 great clans, suggesting Jin's father might not be pleased. Jin responded humbly and wittily, saying he wouldn't dare provoke the iron-blooded demon lord, a man of formidable authority. Jo smiled, clearly impressed by Jin's diplomatic reply. Although Jin felt a bit tense internally, he maintained his composure well. The commander firmly stated that Jin wasn't permitted to leave the area but would receive some privileges. Jin asked to participate in the upcoming exchange ceremony, explaining it was hosted by the Cha-on family and unavoidable. The commander wondered to himself if Jin sought more than he let on and questioned his real intentions. Jin then directly requested entry into Ban Ryu to witness the greatness of the place where the first heavenly demon once trained. The hall leader responded with displeasure, calling the request reckless and explaining the dangers. He informed Jin that the success rate in Cheon Ilgwin was around 20%, while in Banryu it was no higher than 5%. He asked if Jin truly understood the risk he was taking. Jin calmly answered that he was fully aware of the danger. The hall leader sternly warned that anyone who failed the trial would die without exception. He asked Jin again if he still intended to proceed. Jin responded with a firm smile, declaring that he must become stronger no matter the cost. He recalled the dangerous moments from his past, affirming that strength was a matter of life and death and well worth the risk. The hall leader agreed to Jin's request, but only if he personally assembled a capable team for the trial within 6 months. Jin asked in surprise whether he was allowed to recruit any number of people. The hall leader clarified that teams must consist of 6 members and all Jin had to do was pass the test. Jin felt that the brief time frame he was given was unfair compared to others who had been granted years to train. As soon as he entered the training grounds, students began whispering his name and clan with curiosity. Suddenly, a young man named Manga approached, introducing himself as a relative of male Su who had previously been injured due to Jin. Ma Jinong angrily confirmed that Ma Su was his 6th cousin. Jin coldly asked why he had come, and Manga said he simply wanted to be remembered. Jin responded with a faint, sarcastic smile, which, oddly enough, left Ma Jin-song feeling strangely satisfied. In another scene, the sect leader spoke with Yura, criticizing her combat style as still far from perfect. Yura looked tense and embarrassed while she listened to his critiques. The leader chastised her, saying her fear of losing control of her demonic nature had made her weak. He declared that her ultimate goal should be to become a heavenly demon, a rare title that emerges only once every few generations. Yura was shocked at the suggestion that she might be the first to inherit the title directly in the sect's history. The leader explained that only ordinary people are consumed by their demonic nature, someone like her must master it. He warned her that she might lose something precious in pursuit of that goal but had to accept the price. He told her to focus solely on enlightenment for now, subtly hinting at her future and family ties. Xian silently watched the exchange, thinking that the sect leader had always favored young Master Jin, but now began to doubt that after hearing this conversation. The leader then cautiously mentioned certain mysterious individuals who should not be underestimated. Meanwhile, in Cheon Ilgin, trainees were forced to carry massive stones while cries of pain and exhaustion filled the air. The instructor condemned the harshness of the training, noting that the trainees remained weak despite being fighters. Jin sat wearily among them but quickly expressed confidence in his recovery thanks to his powerful bloodline. At the end of training, the instructor announced that the new 5th hall, Skybrain Hall, was still recruiting fighters, signaling fierce competition ahead. He explained that Cheon Ilgwin could nominate 3 individuals per cycle for the new hall, which immediately caught Jin's interest. Jin reflected deeply on Skybrain Hall's nature, recalling how its failure to uncover traitors had raised suspicions in his past life. He saw this as the perfect and safest opportunity to infiltrate the mysterious hall. The instructor then mocked the Manjin clan, suggesting they had unfair advantages in promotions. Jin responded coolly, offering a sarcastic suggestion that perhaps they could create a gatekeeper position at his family estate as a job for the instructor. The instructor visibly reacted to the unexpected and cutting remark. Continuing his mockery, Jin added that the salary of his family's gatekeeper was over 3 times more than what the instructor currently earned. The instructor, stunned by Jin's precise knowledge of the hall's salary structure, asked in disbelief how he had access to such information. Jin simply smiled, remarking that good opportunities always exist for those prepared to seize them. The instructor then approached Jin seriously, asking if the offer was genuine, revealing just how tempted he was by the prospect of wealth. Jin recalled how his master had once spoken of the heavenly arts which, when fully mastered, allowed one to resist even fire and water. He had trained in sword techniques that, although demonic in origin, mirrored orthodox methods in their level of refinement. Reflecting on a previous battle, Jin remembered how hard it typically was to synchronize sword styles, but also how his attacks had flowed effortlessly in harmony with Yura's, like drifting with a river's current. Determined to re-examine that technique with more care, Jin entered into a mental sparring match with Yura. Despite her strength, he managed to block her strikes with greater efficiency than before. Smirking defiantly, Jin asked if she was upset that she couldn't push him back this time. He began to notice blockages in his internal energy centers, but at the same time he felt himself growing closer to understanding her technique. With newfound clarity, Jin surged forward confidently, recognizing a movement that had once been too fast to follow. His opponent watched, stunned, as Jin successfully parried her blow. He realized then that the 10 heavenly demon swords shared a lineage with the sky-slaying demon sword. He questioned how such a deep connection could exist between the 10 heavenly sword and the sky-slaying sword. Using the 6th technique of the 10 heavenly demon swords, Jin countered the overwhelming strike. His attack cleanly surpassed the energy-stored blade and easily outmatched the traditional power of a chai sword. Jin's strength had reached that of a true swordsman. He could now sense the power of the infinite demonic realm. Unleashing a devastating strike, he caused a massive explosion, sending dust swirling into the air. The blast shattered a wall within the training chamber, alarming nearby officials. Inspecting the rubble, Joe expressed shock at how effortlessly the stones had crumbled. He commented that it was fortunate so few people had been near the training room at the time. The instructor questioned whether the explosion might have been an assassination attempt against Jin, prompted by his controversial and formidable strength. One official, staring at the broken stone in confusion, realized Jin's power had far exceeded expectations. Authorities quickly declared a state of emergency, launching a search for any possible intruders and anxiously questioning how the secret 10 heavenly sword technique had been exposed. Sitting in anxious contemplation, Jin wondered who his true master was, the one who had imparted such dangerous, forbidden knowledge. Just then his assistant appeared and hesitantly asked if he had left the traces as instructed. Visibly nervous, the assistant confessed that he had indeed planted the false traces, but now suspected that someone unexpected had also been present. Startled by the alarming news, Jin turned sharply. The assistant confirmed that an outsider had infiltrated the area, calling it an incredibly rare stroke of luck. Jin smiled with confidence and ordered his assistant to pursue and track down the intruder with precision. Smiling back confidently, the assistant assured him that tracking was no problem given his vast experience. It was revealed that the assistant was none other than Bakak Chaeyeon-won, formerly known as Gachil, commander of the 2nd Squad of the Demonic Ghost Killers, a unit operating directly under the Cheon clan. Several days later, tensions escalated when an unidentified official expressed concern over delays in executing certain orders, warning that a major plan could be at risk. Another official nervously promised swift action, admitting that security at the hall had recently become much tighter. The first official made it clear that if Jin refused to join them, he would be killed during the upcoming field training. Meanwhile, Jin remained calm and mentally composed, thanks to the temporary pause in training caused by the earlier incident in the training chamber. It gave him the chance to stabilize his internal strength. He felt relieved that he had managed to avoid falling under the influence of the inner demon. His ambitions for the time being were in check. When Jin arrived at the trainee dormitory, he was warmly received by the others, who quickly made space for him. Some whispered behind his back, expressing hopes that their lives could change dramatically if they joined his clan, though they doubted such a chance. One trainee even kindly prepared a new, comfortable bedding area for Jin, encouraging him to get some proper rest. Majinong barged into the room rudely and provocatively, making the atmosphere tense. In response, Jin gave a mocking, confident smile and remarked that he, too, could give orders if he chose. Majinong sarcastically declined the idea of becoming Jin's subordinate and stubbornly held his ground. Jin patiently explained that if Majinong trained properly, he might even surpass his cousin male Su, whom Jin greatly respected. Majinong left the room, clearly troubled and deep in thought about Jin's words, though he tried to hide his reaction. Later, Jin requested a detailed report on the hall's internal factions and influential figures and began reviewing the document, which listed many familiar names. He was puzzled by the overwhelming number of students bearing the surnames Sang and Yoon. Then it struck him he remembered that the Mountain Hall squad leader had once been his direct superior. He reflected on that honest warrior, someone who had never relied on tricks or connections and had no allegiance to any faction, only to realize, ironically, that even he had eventually joined one. Jin's sense of confusion deepened when he came across the name Han Muin. Suspicious of the resemblance, he felt tense and uneasy, wondering if there was a true connection between Han Muin and Han Mobayak, whom he knew well. Ultimately, Jin decided to set those doubts aside for now, reminding himself to focus on the upcoming group training. The instructor explained that the students would be divided into 9 groups for training battles. The best performing individuals would then be trained in a special technique called Dominance of the Evil Heaven. Jin asked, confused, what this strange-sounding technique actually was. The instructor explained that the Dominance of the Evil Heaven sect had been founded by King Gyeong, and after his death, the sect had fallen into civil war. Strangely, it had been the younger, weaker disciple who had won the war, not the older, stronger one. Even more unexpected was the sudden alliance that formed afterward between the sect and the Orthodox factions, leading to a united front against the demonic sects. Returning with frustration, the instructor emphasized that the group leaders would be selected from the older students. The students who passed the group test proudly lined up in front of the instructor. Jin was placed in Group 2 and remained curious about who their leader would be. He was surprised when Sanja nervously stepped forward and introduced herself as the group leader. Speaking shyly, she expressed her hope to work well with everyone. Sanja was visibly upset to see Jin in her group as she had been trying to avoid him. Jin came to realize just how crucial Sanja's leadership would be to the group's success in battle. Sanja, however, appeared visibly overwhelmed and felt as if she had already messed everything up. Majinong raised his hand and posed a difficult question to Sanja. Without mincing words, he asked if there was a way to replace the group leader. Sanja, replying with hesitation, explained that once a leader had been chosen, they couldn't be replaced. Jin thought to himself, worriedly, that if Sanja chose to step down, the group might completely fall apart. Choosing to confront the issue head-on, Sanja turned to Majinong and asked him directly if he had a problem. She spoke firmly, declaring that her grandfather had taught her to use force on those who refused to listen. Everyone was taken aback by her declaration, curious about what kind of person her grandfather must have been. Sanja then challenged Majinong, telling him that if he really wanted to test her strength, he should do it directly. Majinong asked what would happen if he defeated her. Sanja responded with full confidence. If she lost, she would resign from leadership, recommend him as her successor, and leave the hall entirely. The students were excited and started cheering for the showdown. Majinong launched a fierce attack using the Bloodstream Phantom Sword technique and firing a flying blood bullet at Sanja. She dodged the assault with graceful ease and calm poise, preparing for her counterstrike. Then, with visible determination, she charged forward and landed a clean, forceful blow on Majinong, clearly demonstrating her superior skill. After Sanja's decisive strike landed, Majinong was knocked backward and hit the ground hard, leaving the spectators in stunned silence. Meanwhile, Jin noticed something strangely familiar about Sanja's stance during the strike, something that caught his attention. The way she held her sword reminded him of a style he knew well, though he dismissed the idea because a key element was missing. If it were that technique, its presence alone could have been powerful enough to shift the power dynamics within the entire sect. Majinong couldn't accept being defeated. Enraged, he shouted a threat at Sanja and began gathering his inner energy, preparing to unleash a high-level technique, evidence of his mastery in Chi swordsmanship. The students murmured in shock, as some had never witnessed such a move from the Blood Dragon clan. Jin recognized, from Jin Song's expression, that Majinong had lost control completely. Despite this, Sanja remained calm and warned him gently to stop, explaining that such a sword technique could cause serious harm. Yet Majinong refused to stand down. Exploding with fury, he declared his noble clan status and rejected the notion of being humiliated like that. Just then, the supervising instructor stepped in, halting Majinong before he could cross any more lines in what was still a training setting. Majinong protested, insisting he had the right to fight back. But the instructor remained firm. He explained that the principle of might makes right didn't override the sect's rules and discipline, rules that had been laid down by the founders of the 6 great clans and were to be followed by everyone, regardless of lineage. Hearing this, Majinong lowered his head and accepted defeat. The instructor then ordered all students to return to their groups and resume their training according to the schedule. Quietly, Jin remarked that the whole experience had served as a valuable lesson, one that might unify the group under Sanja's leadership. As Sanja passed by Majinong, she softly asked if his injury was all right. Half a month later, a new training phase began that used complex formations in wide-open arenas. Sanja was seen repeating the names of the formations under her breath, clearly confused despite her efforts to remember them. As the groups tried to follow the commands, the results were chaotic, with poor coordination all around. In one training corner, Majin Song looked irritated and turned to Jin, questioning his stance and asking why he hadn't stepped in as the true leader. Jin replied sarcastically, reminding him that it was he who got knocked out by Sanja with a single strike. Majinong argued that the previous attempt at leadership had failed and suggested that Jin take control in the next mock battle. He insisted that if Jin didn't lead, the team would be embarrassed in front of everyone. Though usually confident, Jin now seemed hesitant. Majinong admitted that taking orders from Jin had felt awkward at times, but he emphasized that Jin was the most qualified leader and that everyone would be willing to follow him sincerely. Jin didn't outright reject the idea, but he also didn't accept it. Instead, he quietly took a sip of his drink. Frustrated, Majinong stepped closer and demanded to know why Jin was refusing, unable to understand his reluctance. He tried to explain why he'd nominated Jin as leader, but Jin cut him off sharply, asking him to stop overdoing it. At that moment, both of them suddenly noticed something strange behind the trees and fell silent, puzzled. The day's training began under tension after the group leader made an unexpected choice in battle formation. It wasn't just a mistake, it was reckless enough to endanger everyone. Yet Dojin stood by his decision, insisting that a leader's command was final and that he alone would accept responsibility. One student challenged San Dojin, accusing him of choosing the Raging Ram formation over the agreed-upon defensive strategy and nearly getting them all killed. The dispute escalated. Another trainee bitterly claimed that Dojin didn't care if the team was eliminated, as long as he himself remained safe. Voices rose in anger. Others criticized his judgment and said that despite his seniority, he was unfit to lead in battle. Watching from the sidelines, Jin Yong-yong saw that the Dojin before him was just a shadow of the legendary leader he once was. Jin recalled Dojin's old title, Father of the Demon Wind Unit, a man who had once turned an obscure squad into a battalion known for fierce loyalty. Back then, his followers would have died for him without hesitation. But now, that old aura wasn't enough to command respect. Faced with open defiance, Dojin resorted to threats, saying he'd use force if disobedience continued. Some students mocked him, asking how he planned to control them all by himself. One of them pointed out how strange it was that everyone had accepted the plan minutes earlier only to turn against it once a real fight seemed imminent. Jin spotted Commander Byack Sanga among the crowd and felt certain her presence wasn't by chance. There was something deeper going on. He and Majin Song discussed how strange the entire situation had become, unqualified leaders and an expectation of blind loyalty. Something about it felt profoundly wrong. Jin also believed that Sanja's placement on their team wasn't random, it was part of a much larger scheme unfolding behind the scenes. As the sun set, tensions slowly began to ease. In a quiet corner, San Dojin and Sanja sat together, speaking privately and out of sight. Dojin, in a low voice, lamented how everyone had managed to stay composed, yet one old man had thrown everything into chaos. Sanja looked amused, recalling an awkward moment from last year, and couldn't suppress her smug smile. Leaning in closer, she asked if he was trying to recruit her for his team again. Dojin apologized, saying that it wasn't his idea, his commander was the one insisting. Sanja told him not to apologize, but firmly repeated that she wouldn't join any group, explaining that she had her own reasons for staying independent. After the conversation, Dojin sensed a heavy, awkward silence settling between them, unsure of how to break it. He attempted to shift the mood by asking Sanja whether there was someone important in her group, hoping it might ease the tension. Sanja replied with clear hesitation and unease, admitting that there was someone, though she avoided going into any details. Then, quite suddenly, she began to speak with emotion, her concern sounding exaggerated. She explained that, while this person hadn't shown any harmful intentions yet, they possessed the strength to easily destroy her if they ever chose to. Her tone grew more intense as she struggled to keep her emotions in check. She went on to say it was inappropriate to speak about someone behind their back, especially with that person so nearby. Unbeknownst to her, Jin had just approached, startling both Dojin and Sanja with his sudden presence. He walked up with a calm, natural smile, as though he hadn't heard a single word of their conversation. Greeting them, he said it was good to see them together, then added with a grin that he had come to discuss something that concerned them both, clearly catching them off guard. Turning directly to San Dojin, Jin confidently offered him a position at his side, reaching out his hand to stress the seriousness of his proposal. Dojin was taken aback by the blunt offer and questioned in disbelief whether Jin even knew who he really was. With calm certainty, Jin replied that he knew exactly who he was and addressed him by his former title, the Butcher's Blade of Bear Fortress. Sanja was utterly stunned upon hearing Dojin's true title. Her expression was one of pure fear and shock, as if she had just discovered a deeply buried secret. Jin continued speaking to Dojin, pointing out that despite his talent and formidable reputation, he lacked several core fundamentals, specifically high-level internal energy and advanced martial techniques. At that remark, Jin seemed to hit a nerve. Dojin looked slightly irritated by the comment, though he couldn't deny its truth. Reaffirming his offer, Jin swore by the Jin clan and his own name that he would elevate San Dojin to the rank of perfected master within just 10 years. Briefly, Jin recalled an old commander from a past life who had always lamented that he'd never had an opportunity like this when he was younger. He reflected silently, believing this to be Dojin's once-in-a-lifetime chance, one he would never see again. That silent hope was evident in Jin's gaze as he looked at Dojin, waiting for him to accept, certain that no better offer would ever come. But to Jin's surprise, San Dojin responded with a clear and resolute refusal. Jin, being shocked, exclaimed, "What? Did she just say no to my offer?" Now his answer was, "I'm truly grateful for the offer, but I can't accept it." He rejected it. San Dojin, crying inside, recalled, "I appreciate it, but I can't betray the one I serve." His friend asked, "Why not just accept it already? You will really regret it if you don't." Jin is contemplating San Dojin's answer in his mind. I did not think San Dojin was this loyal to the seventh elder. If I remember correctly, he was not so devoted before. Jin, trying to make San Dojin understand his point, told him the seventh elder would understand. Because his own disciple is being given a chance to spread his wings. If you think reasonably, there's no reason for him to stop that. San Dojin, thinking few long and heard moments, replied, "No, he assigned me a mission. That's why I must stay by Senior Han's side and assist him." Jin tries to remember his past memories and mentions Senior Han. Could it be him? With that, a mystery is cleared again. The girl explained, "You are referring to Han Mayong, right?" Jin, suddenly getting the person's identity, murmured, "So that's how this all connects." San Dojin further explained, saying he's the true heir to the seventh elder. Jin, shocked, says to himself, "What? In my past life, someone else inherited that role. Did he get expelled before that? Maybe he didn't grow enough in 20 years? Or perhaps he changed his name. He thinks his best tried to remember who just is Han Muyin?" Jin, shifting his focus, spoke to the girl. "Anyway, it seems you have a question for me too." Hearing what Jin said to her, she was brimming with joy. She asked, "So, Mr. Jin, are you going to give me the same offer?" Jin, like a Sigma, replied with a firm rejection, "No, not now." He mentioned, "Of course, I'm going to talk to you about Group 2. He advised her, "Isn't it time you step up and do your job properly?" She confessed to him, "So you noticed, however, it is still not time." Giving the reason, because it's the Cheonil Academy's policy. And until the mock battle, I need to draw out as much opposition from the team as possible. MC told her, "But since I've seen through your plan, isn't it time to assess how I handle things?" She admitted, "So, you even figured out the purpose of this. All right, tell me about your proposal." Jin, in an assured tone, told her as vice leader, "I'll back your authority. So please go all out for Group 2's victory. And remember to do so with that same burning passion you used to blow Ma Jinseong away." Hearing him, she blushed and licked a tomato. At that moment, she forgot to speak due to his certain remark. She spoke shyly. "I got caught up in the excitement of following my grandfather's teachings." Jin says, "Good thing it only ended with feelings of excitement. If you had one more sword, it might have resulted in serious injuries." Hearing his thoughts on her swordsmanship, she was shocked and the shyness vanished from her face. She surprisingly asked, "Who are you?" MC laughed and said the same thing, "Who am I?" She, being curious, asked a new set of questions. "How do you know that?" Jean, smirking things, "I was just guessing, but now I am sure. Still, it's better for me to fake a cough once and act clueless here." She was now suspicious and angry. She told him, "Do you take me for a fool who doesn't even know the basics of dual-handed swordsmanship? When someone is accustomed to using dual swords only once, the openings show, and a decent martial master would notice." "Are you saying you're that kind of martial master?" Jean confidently answered, "Of course." And with that, to show her his Sigma aura, he picked up a twig from the ground and filled it with mana using a spatial technique. Smiling, he asked her, "How about now? Is this enough proof?" Our girl Baek Sunga was impressed by seeing Jin's martial capability, and she thought to herself, sword energy? And he's doing it with just a thing? She, getting out of her dazed state, exclaimed again, "What? Drawing out sword energy with a twig is as hard as producing enhanced energy." Baek Sunga also explained in detail that without precise control, the twig would explode from the energy. She further contemplated, saying, "So you are one of the famous 6 demonic dragons?" Jean said no by waving his hand. "No, that's my younger brother you are talking about." He, suggesting her, somewhat ordered, "Just as you keep using your dual swords a secret, I'd like to keep my skills secret too. So how about we call it a draw and share secrets?" Now he, in his thoughts, kept thinking, "Just as I thought, Baek Sunga is an outsider using her identity." As she started to leave, he, seeing her, told himself she is probably from an incredibly powerful clan. Ordering his bodyguard, Guchil, to keep a close eye on her. Guchil asks if she seems suspicious. "Should I just eliminate her? I'm confident I'm making sure no traces are left behind." Jean, flicking his head, reminded him to say, "What are you talking about? We have to protect her. Because Baek Sunga does not exist in the future, I know." Jean, clearing his suspicion, mentioned, "I think I've found the assassination target." Recalling the information in his mind, he thinks there is only one place that has ties strong enough to send a child to the demonic cult and uses dual swords. The greatest sword clan in the Central Plains. The Nanshan's Baek clan. The current head of the Baek clan is one of the 5 kings and the leader of the Orthodox Alliance. It's very much possible that Baek Sunga is her grandfather. And again, in a few years, both the Baek and Nangang clans will be annihilated together. We can see the annihilated of the leader where he is saying the demonic cult is behind this. We also get to know the next leader of the Orthodox Alliance, Sword Supreme Sage Guan Hyun. Jean contemplates at the time, "I wonder why we did not defend ourselves when we were blamed." However, all the pieces of the puzzle would fall in place if something had happened to Baek Sunga there. Now my question is, why would he send his granddaughter here? As if getting a clue, he pondered, "Wait a second. Maybe Yurli the cult leader was informed beforehand, right? Would it have killed him to give me a heads up before I came here? I wonder if I'm supposed to be the potential son-in-law, am I not?" Meanwhile, as MC was saying all of this stuff, the heavenly demon started scratching his ear. He murmured, "My ears are suddenly itching." Then, looking up towards the sky, he mentioned again, "Sai, in any case, I'll make sure to keep Baek Sunga alive and foil all your twisted plans." The scene takes us to 1 month later in the sect's training ground. As it was being declared, "Now then we shall begin the mock battle between groups 2 and 4. And remember the rules, the flag bearers can only issue orders. And the group that breaks the opponent's flag first wins. Nothing else." At Group 2, we have Baek Sunga as the leader. And in Group 4, we have Ju Guxian as the leader. The instructor, with a gesture of his hands, starts the battle. With that, bot leaders ordered to deploy the diagonal line formation. Soldiers rush toward each other for a confrontation. A group of instructor, looking at them, said, "Oh, are they going for a power clash right from the start?" One enthusiastic guy started to bet 1 silver on Group 4's victory. As he beat his girl companion, commented, "Group 4, not Group 2, oh? Instructor John, you're going all in?" He answered, "Oh? You don't get it, those 3 were the first to figure out the mutiny test, and third, they're hardest to follow their leader's orders. Their coordination is insane. We get to know 2 of their names, one is Beksa and the other is Hyuksa. And combined, they are the Demon Snake Trio. Boy oh boy. They would be pleased to meet Jin Yomyang. As they were doing their self-introduction, Jin saw them and was a little bit cringed in his thoughts. In a moment one of them attacked him with his sword. And when he blocked the sword attack, the guy with a menacing look remarked, "When I saw you, I fell in love at first sight." Jin commented, "Was it their plan all along?" All the instructors stated their fate in Team 4. They seriously distracted Jin. One of them shouted, "In team battles, coordination is everything." So Group 4 smashed that team to pieces. As they were piling up a mountain of silver in Team 4's name, suddenly from nowhere the instructor called a beat on Group 2 of 10 golds and on their victory. Everyone was shocked and asked, "What? You're betting half your monthly salary?" He looked at them and laughed by saying, "If you're scared, you can choose to give up now." The scene takes us to a marketplace where people are buying and choosing stuff they need, and we see the trio standing while their mouths are filled with saliva. One of them mentions, "Normally we would not even be able to get close to a place like the Cheonil Academy. We are at the absolute bottom, worthlessness underclasses." Shortly they introduced themselves as 3 worms. At least, that was until the demonic Heaven Tower Master showed us grace and told us that your names are worms? Couldn't you have been called snacks at the very least? The Master tells them you have missed the prime age to learn advanced martial arts by a bit. But if you wish, I could teach you some of our skills. I want you guys to give your best shot. The Worm Trio thanks the Master by saying, "We will surely repay the Madam's grace for allowing us entry into Cheonil Academy. Although we were in the academy, but the name or the post of ours was very shameful for us." While attacking Jin,
White hair.
Guy remarks that we pledge our loyalty to you now, and to do that, we must get into his good graces. Calling Jin, he says, "So please accept us." Jin exclaimed, "Your passion is clear, but the mock battle is still in progress, you know that? We had hoped that if we ever got a lord, it would be someone like you." Other people who were watching the bantering spoke to each other, "What the hell are those brats doing right now?" The leader of Group 4 clenched her teeth in anger and said, "What the hell are they doing? They should be trying to defeat the opponent with all their might, yet they're pulling the sword of stun." Jin, agreeing with their proposition, said, "I understand your situation. Let's continue after the mock battle," and with that all of them answered, "All right, sir." Group 4 leader watching this exclaimed in anger, "Those damned lowborns. I won't let them get away with this." The leader, we got to know that she was from a noble clan called Juguksun. She says to herself, "If it continues like this, I, Juguxian of a reputable clan, will lose to some commoner." She looks and says they have people from the Ma and Jin clans. That's totally unfair. She loudly orders a switch to the surging flow formation. And with that, they charge at the battle using the formation. She speaks, "I will defend Baeksunga and obtain victory as the group leader." Baeksunga, seeing their rapid approach, she calls her men, "They are targeting me directly. Start the rushing formation." From both flanks, as the enemies approach them, Group 2 starts splitting from the middle and starts giving them space to move. Group 4 leader sees this exclamation after getting to know what Baeksunga was trying to do. Group 4 lead explained that we are not breaking through. They are letting us through. It's a tactic to lure us into close combat. Jin fighting kicks a guy and suddenly gets ready. Spoke, "Now's the time." Baeksunga confirms Jin's signal, commanding everyone to perform for the battering ram formation. She should break the chaos and launch a counterattack. Group 4, understanding the situation, they were in a panicked state, their members to stop Team 2 and save our team. Jin called everyone, "Let's go and do our job." His teammate enthusiastically nods in confirmation. Team Leader 4 called his soldiers to stop them, no matter what, of course, while shouting, "You idiots." As Jin was passing through the battlefield, suddenly some attackers commented, "We won't let you pass." Jin also asks them, "You seem exhausted?" One of them answered him, "If we're breached here, then we're not worthy of being her subordinates." Jin comments, "Well, it doesn't matter even if you don't let me through. To be honest, I'm not the main lord." Now suddenly we get to see Jinseong approaching towards Team 4's flag. The leader in shock exclaimed, "The main lord is Ma Jinseong?" And with that, Ma Jinseong broke the flag with a sharp kick. I guess everyone knows by now that Group 2 wins the mock battle. Jinseong, puffing his chest, tells everyone Group 2 wins the mock battle and celebrate joyfully. But remember, I was the main man and I'm from Ma Clan. Someone says I understand Group 2's happiness of winning the match. On the other side, the instructors who won the bet are happy too. Especially the head instructor, I also understand their happiness. Team 4 is frustrated by the loss. Their reaction is also understandable. However, Group 3 to 4 is grief-stricken from defeat because of that. They are crying so much. Is that not a bit much? Is it not like they are being expelled? So why the long face? Jean asked who pissed you off. They tried to answer no, sir. If you see, it's just that. Before they could answer, Jean cut them off and said, are you frustrated because you don't get to shine? Or were they planning to knock down the whole demonic heaven tower if you lost? WHE white hair guy spoke in crying tone. How did you know that? It's just instinct. Jean spoke. I have lived too meeky for someone in my position. He added, to be honest, once one is at the level of the 6 clans, power abuse is tradition, and tyranny is routine. Jean remarked, well then I'll stop them for you. The guys thanking Jean said, really you mean it? We will never forget this kindness. In assuring them, okay, no need for thanks. Though, you do know what it means to become my subordinate, don't you? Before you asked me to accept you, right? Answering affirmative, the white hair guy answered, of course we do. The guy also mentioned you're looking for people to join you in mainstream. It means the main and special trial, right? Jean nods. You have to survive that too. I can't take the dead as subordinates after all. He asks again, so do you have the guts to follow me to hell if it comes to that? He asked them again, will you follow me till the end? The trio bowed their heads in confirmation, told him, yes, sir. The scene takes us to Group Leader 4 where she is breaking chairs and furniture in anger over losing the match. She keeps saying to herself, damn it. Those filthy low-born scum. I'm the nephew of the Jean clan patriarch. How dare they use Jean Yomyung to threaten me? Rewinding a little past, we can see Jean saying to her that the demonic heaven tower is one of my favorite places. If it disappears, I'd be really sad. By this line, Jean tried to say go ahead and challenge the Jean clan if you dare. The loser leader exclaimed, normally people of the same level should associate with each other. So why is he doing that? As she was talking, she saw Jean and Baek Sunga. Curious, she asked herself, why are they here and what are they doing? When she suddenly heard Jean saying, Group Leader, please just call me Vice Group Leader. Baek Sunga replied, Yeel, dear Vice Leader. She, in anger, called, where did that guy even crawl out from? And why is she being so friendly with him? Why is she looking at him with those eyes? This is all wrong. Everything's reversed. This is all Baek Sunga's fault. Now, if I think about it, if everything, the mock battle loss and Jean Yemyung's involvement, then it all makes sense. As she was watching them, someone came from back and asked her, did I come at a bad time? She, seeing his face, exclaimed in surprise, you're him? The guy told her, your hatred toward Baek Sunga seems intense. He asked again, is that hatred so strong that you wish to kill her? Hearing his remark, she stared and, baffled, exclaimed, what are you saying, man? He is clearly trying to sow discord among them. Tell her to think about it. What if Baek Sunga seduced the instructors and manipulated them into making the Jean clan a part of the group? She, after hearing his made-up thoughts, thinks to herself in her imagination. She felt like Baek Sunga saying to her, dear Ju Guxian, you can have the commoners. He also mentioned, now if you think again, what if Baek Sunga wagged her tail, and the naive Jean Yomyung got caught in her trap? She also vividly imagines Jean and Baek Sunga confessing to each other by saying, I dream of a love that crosses the status divide. After all of this imagination, confirming her hate, she answered affirmatively to his remark. She murmurs quietly, of course it does make sense now. Seeing his chance, he whispers in her ear, shall I make it happen for you? He makes his intention by saying, I mean the chance to kill her. The scene takes us to the gathering of the group leader where there is a discussion of choosing the leader for the second mock battle. As the discussion was going on, suddenly the pink-haired girl hinted toward her. From nowhere, her suggestion was, there's no reason to make the loser of the previous battle the captain of the upcoming second mock battle, is there? She boldly suggested, so let's have the only victorious group leader from the previous battle, who is undoubtedly Baek Sunga. Group 2's leader, taking the position of main leader, Sunga, hearing this suggestion from her, was a tittle taken aback. Confirming the proposal, the Group 4 leader, Jong Ho, who unknowingly looks quite beaten up, says no objections here. And with that, all of them made the decision that the topic was decided. Jean, watching all of this, thinks to himself, something feels off. Looking at Ms. Villain, Jean mentions to himself that she had apologized to everyone, even to the Group 3 and 4. Somehow, that makes it even more suspicious. As he was saying all of this, she, on the other hand, was dreaming of him. In her mind, she just kept thinking, "Oh my Yaimyang, you are just mine. I'll keep you only to me." Jean explained further by saying, "From my experience in my 3 lives, she is that kind of woman who definitely holds grudges the way a snake coils its body." Damn, Jean, my man, that was so direct. You just roost her from top to bottom. Anyway, coming to the story, he thinks, what is she planning? Don't tell me she is trying to finish the killing request. He again asked himself, is she in on it too? Now the scene shifts to the mock battle preparation squad training field, where people are discussing with each other when someone says, "What do you think of the squad's conditions?" When Baek Sunga also asked Jean, "Isn't it a mess?" Jean nodded. "Right you are." On the ground, we can see the soldiers practicing a tactic called the Black Star Formation over and over again. Frustrated with the drill process on one of them, comments, "Really, the way things are going, we can't bring out the essence of formation techniques." Jean mentioned to her there's no helping it. For now, let's focus only on the cohesion. Baek Sunga nodded. "Well, true that is." She adds her point by saying we can't expect high-level movement from newbies in the China Academy. On the other side of the field, we see the head instructor was making a bet on squat 1 for 10 silver with each person. Seeing his state, other instructors murmured, "Here he goes again with the bet." Yura tells Jean that if the first squad doesn't fall apart like the total mess that 3 squad was, it's progress in itself. Jean wanted to know about the situation that she was speaking of. Baek Sunga laughed and said to him, "Oh, they could not even agree with each other." So apparently the 3 group leaders are all guarding the flag equally, to be fair? Squad 2, our opponent, also had some drama. As the flashback starts, we see Sun Dojoin shouting to his subordinates, "I've already told you guys to stop fighting a few times." At this point, his group members were trembling due to fear of him. Sun Dojin is making it clear to them by saying, "I'm the leader for the squad too. Did you get it in your small brains?" Jean thinks to himself, "Oh, so Sun Dojin, a high-power combatant who could cease enemies all the way, is now busy being the great leader? Well, that works in our favor. We clearly have the upper hand now." Baek Sunga agrees with that statement of Jean. She mentioned that thought, "We're so lucky." A few moments later, we come to see the main villain of the manhwa plot, Mo Bayak, calling his subordinate to come and kneel in front of him. The subordinate answered, "Yes, sir," and did as he ordered. He, praising his kneeling lackey, said, "You did well by provoking Sandojian into becoming leader. Now his hands will be tied during the mock battle. So when the time comes, the job you have to do is to kill Baek Sunga." The subordinate told his master that due to the previous incident, the Cheonil Academy has tightened surveillance. So if I move, I risk exposing my identity. Mo Bayak, letting a deep sigh, said, "Who the hell was the idiot who barged in recklessly and dragged us all into the mess?" Not giving any second thought to his subordinate's idea, doubled down on his plan. He said to the assassin, "But for that very reason, we need to act now. Because if you kill Baek Sunga, all the attention will be on you. You will end up taking all the blame for everything." Assuring his subordinate, he mentioned, "I'll find an escape route for you." The lackey mentioned an escape route. "You will manage it for me? Well, even if not, it does not matter. Because I am a tool. If my owner discarded me, I should be disposed of quietly. This is an assassin." Bowing in subordination, he says, "Yes, sir, I the John will do my best done of killing Baek Sunga."